Hi there, I'm going to talk today about cleaning the switches on a Oberheim DX or DMX drum machine. And so here's a front view. Here's some of the tools I'm going to use. Got a Phillips screwdriver, flat blade screwdriver, 1/4 inch nut driver, X-Acto knife, a little flat blade screwdriver, long nose pliers, and some cutters, and this tool with a pointed end. So those are the tools. Now let's first thing you want to do is take all the knobs off the faders. If there are any that are stubborn, you don't want to come off, move the slider all the way up to one end or the other, and you can use a screwdriver, kind of rock it, and that'll usually loosen it up. And I like to save all the knobs and things in a little plastic tub so I don't lose them. Then we can open the cover, and then I'm going to put the camera down and undo the nuts. Okay, so once you take these nuts off, you're not going to make sure you don't close the lid on the unit, because if you do, then all the little spacers that hold the board are going to fall off into the main circuit board and cause trouble. So remember, after this point, don't close the lid until you put the front cover back on, the circuit board back on. Yeah, I can see there are a few problems already with this. You look at this fader is bent up at the end. The board is bent up there, so that's probably going to need to be replaced. But anyway, back to the switches. I'm going to take all these nuts off. There are on the DX, I think it's 15 total. About a minute or two to get them all off of here. And sometimes when people go to clean the switches, they'll take a shortcut and not remove the circuit board, which is a mistake. I think we'll show you later what happens when you try and do that. Okay, now I usually put down a piece of cardboard, so when I power up the unit, with the board off, it's not going to short out against anything. So now we can move the board down here. Okay, so this one doesn't look too bad, but a lot of times you have a big accumulation of dust and crud under the slots where the slide pots go through the cover. And what I like to do is get some duct tape. Just pull out a piece like this and spread it out across here. Just kind of run my finger up and down to pick up all the dust, pull it off, and the pots come out nice and clean. And do the same on the other end. maybe with a new piece of tape. That's pretty much standard procedure for me. And look for any other little bits of dust that you want to clean up with the tape. This is actually pretty clean. Okay, now I'm going to show you how to remove the caps from these switches. I'm going to use a flat blade screwdriver, and there's a little, you can hear a little pop usually when you give a little leverage under each side, and it'll just pop right off. It's got these two posts that snap into holes down below, and I usually just take all the caps off at once. Okay, this is the one switch that's really in bad shape, and you can see it's actually broken, coming loose from the board, so that's going to take some work to fix. So we'll just remove all these caps. Zoom out again. So the DX has, this is a DXa, which has got two different kinds of switches. The older DX and the DMX have all the same type of switches with these caps that come off. You want to make sure you don't get the screwdriver under the body of the switch, just in between the cap and the body. And just a little twist of the screwdriver was enough to pop the cap off on both. Sometimes it takes both sides, and sometimes it's already loose on one side, and you just pop it off like that. That's the last of these switches. And we'll talk about the smaller switches later. Okay, so my normal routine for cleaning these switches is take this flat blade screwdriver and kind of reach under the cross wire here. There's a wire with a coil spring on one end that comes across, and it's supported by this big coil spring in the middle. And the way it works is when you push down on the cap, it doesn't push the wire, but it pushes down on the coil spring, which leaves the switch to spring down under its own coil power over here and make contact with a small cross wire below. And so cleaning the cross wire below is the first thing I do. And I just kind of burnish the oxidation off of it by rubbing the screwdriver across the top a few times. And so it becomes shiny when you do that, which means it's cleaner. And then I take a X-Acto knife with a fine tip and reach under and do the same for the underside of this cross wire. And I try and do it from both sides, so it's clean in the area where it contacts the lower wire. Okay, and then after burnishing the wires, I'm going to blow a little air in there to remove any debris. And what I do is I test the switch by using these long nose pliers to grab the big coil spring and kind of with outward pressure, not touching the cross wire, just push down on the coil spring. and make sure that it's triggering okay. And if it's good, then that's it. I'll use maybe a drop or two of this DXa, which helps to keep the contact good for a while. So I'm going to go ahead and clean all the switches I've popped the caps off of, and then I'll get back to the video after that. Okay, I'll give you a closer look at some of these switches here, so you can see the parts a little more clearly. I'm going to give you a closer look at these switches so you can see what I'm talking about. This is the cross wire. It's got a coil spring of its own at the end here, and it should be straight out here without being bent. Sometimes people will bend these trying to make them work a little better, but it never really works very well. And then this is the big coil spring in the middle. That's what the button cap presses down on. And then under the cross wire, there's this little wire at the end here going in that direction. It's kind of hard to see, but it's down there. That's what the cross wire makes contact with when it falls down as the big coil spring is depressed. And so it's the contact between that wire below and this cross wire up here that needs to be clean in order to get good contact. That and the spring here needs to be properly bent or properly coiled, and this cross piece should be straight, and then the little wire below needs to go horizontally underneath that way. So now this is the switch I mentioned earlier was broken, and you can see the cross wire is like totally wiped out, and there's not even I don't even see a coil on the end anymore. I think what happened was somebody tried to remove it by pulling up on the switch body, which not only did it break the little right angle wire that normally goes below, but it actually unbent the coil on this wire and broke it off. So I think I'm going to have to replace the whole switch body. Is the easiest way to get a new set of wires in there. And the other switches all I think pretty much look okay. And I'll go ahead and clean all of them by burnishing the contacts in the appropriate area. And I'll try and do that one more time on camera so you can see a little better. Okay, now I've got the camera at a better angle. Let's try cleaning this switch. So what I'm going to do is take my little screwdriver and go under the cross wire. If I can see what I'm doing. Okay, there we go. Under the cross wire and burnish that lower wire, and you can see it's getting shinier as I go. Kind of move the screwdriver at slightly different angles so we get the whole top surface cleaned out. And you don't need a whole lot of pressure on it, it's just kind of a burnishing action that cleans the oxidation off that contact. And then to clean the cross wire, the upper wire, I'm going to again go below, but now the blade of the knife is pointing upwards at a slight angle, and I'm going to just kind of do the same, kind of scraping slightly or burnishing. You don't really want to scrape a lot of metal off there, just get rid of the oxidation, and then come in from the other side as well. If I can see what I'm doing. Yeah. So you want the knife to be at as low an angle as possible, because you're just trying to get that underside of the contact wire clean, where it is going to bend down and touch the other contact. Doesn't take too much. And then a little canned air to blow out the debris, and a drop of DXa here. I just put a drop right on the top wire, and that'll end up on the lower contact eventually also. And then testing the contact, I'm going to use my long nose pliers here and kind of push outward slightly on the coil spring, just so that I can push it down without interfering with the cross wire above. And this kind of simulates the button cap. So as I push down, you can hear the drum triggering cleanly and reliably. Now let me show you the button cap. If you look in here, you can see that it's got those two little fingers coming down, and those actually fit inside the edges of the coil spring and push down on it. So pop this cap back on here until it clicks. We have a nice reliable trigger button. Okay, now I'm going to replace this broken switch. So to do that, take out the coil spring so I don't lose it. Might need that for some other replacement later. And I'm going to bend and turn power back off. That's important. I'm going to use my soldering iron and a solder sucker to remove the old solder from the switch. And it just falls right out because it was already loose. And it ended up over here. Yeah, that switch is a goner. And I'll clean, I've got the switch out, I'll clean under it with a little bit of alcohol. Some of that crud out of there. That's good. And I'll go find a new switch. Okay, I've got a new switch which I was able to find through a company called Tower, which carries a lot of replacement parts. The only switches they have numbers on them at the moment, so I'm going to take this brand new number 3 cap off and put it aside, and I'm going to use the old plain cap that came with the switch because it's still in good shape. And I'm going to orient this the same way as the other switches, just to be consistent. And underneath there are the 2 wires and 2 little plastic pins that'll fit in the 4 holes. I think if I straighten this out a little bit, it'll go in a little better. Okay, the plastic sheet was in the way, that's all. So let's try this again. Okay, there it goes. That should sit flat on the board. Okay. So yeah, I'm holding the switch from one side to make sure it lays flat. Get some solder on one pin, check that it's still laying flat, and then solder the other pin. Okay, that should be good. Now, give it a try. Okay, same routine. I'll grab the outer edges of that big coil spring and push down, and hopefully we'll get a sound out of it. Oh, there it is. Yeah, oh, that's working. There's the other switches. All working good. As I was blowing air on these switches to clean them, I noticed that there's this oily stuff coming out from under the switches. Apparently somebody just kind of sprayed contact cleaner down through the switches at some point, and I don't really recommend that. It doesn't really work very well, and the switches don't really show a lot of improvement from that. You really have to take them apart to get them clean. So I'll wipe off that oily stuff. Okay. Now I'll go ahead and add a little bit of DXa to everybody. The last step in cleaning. Now I'll go ahead and test these one more time before I put the caps on. Make sure everything's working. And turn on the power again. Alright, let's see. Well, it's kind of quiet, but it's working. That one I cleaned earlier. Okay, those are all working. So I'll go ahead and put on the caps again. Dust them off a little bit. Caps should just snap right on. Sometimes it takes a little bit of extra pressure, but that's okay. As long as they move up and down smoothly once they're snapped in. This can be dusty work. Also, that contact cleaner that got sprayed in here, I think is contributing to the dust collection. Let's wipe some of these a little bit. Sometimes when these caps are really dirty, I'll actually wash them, put them in a jar with some warm water and soap and shake them around a bit, and then let them dry completely. It makes them a little nicer. These are not too bad, except for that bit of contact cleaner residue on some of them. And if it all works out, you'll have the same number of caps you start out with. Okay, that's the last one. Okay, that's it for the big Schadow switches.